Here, of course, Pete Kauser, Pete's on our board here. He's been with us a number of years and really donated some nice things to the museum, including some Charlevilles. George Jedison, who's also donated a very nice Charleville to the museum. And these guys are kind of our local experts that kind of can help us out. And then we've invited Paul Ackerman. Paul is retired from West Point and did curatorial work there, and boy, he really knows his stuff on these things. So I'm putting them all on the spot today to talk about our collections a little bit. We're going to keep it kind of informal here as we talk about these things. You can ask questions, and I think that'll kick it off. Let me grab the first musket. I'm going to bring it over here, and we'll get things started.
First item looking for bid.
What's my bid? What's my bid?
Yeah, right. All right, this is a piece that this came from Skip. What did we say this one was? This is a 74?
54. 1754 French house.
1754. All right, you guys go ahead and talk about this one a little bit.
Well, I'll just start to say this is the quintessential musket that was used by the French during the French and Indian War. There will be advances in French designs well past this, as we're going to see. But from 1717, there was a model 1717, there was a 1728, 1740s. This is the 1754. There'll be a common theme throughout all of these muskets. They're long, they're heavy, they are banded with arrow bands, and they have what we will call the droopy butt. So, in that curvature, traditional of all the earlier French patterns up through the French and Indian War. After the French and Indian War, the French Empire was in serious financial straits and also depleted of arms. So this will be the last of this style musket made. And then when we get to the next musket that they have over there, you're going to see an entire new redesign, complete redesign. And you'll see the evolution as we go along. So that's what I got to say about that.
You can see on this musket it has a longer butt plate. It goes all the way up, where later on they made them shorter. And they changed some of the barrel bands and also the front swivel, the front barrel band.
So we'll have one band at the front, on your forearm there. And this is two-banded. This is what they call two-banded musket. I haven't seen that there. And
It's a straight up example of a 54.
54 straight. Yeah.
Very well,
Yeah,
very good piece.
Yeah, so the way this band is made here, it's got that little rounded piece in there.
Sling swivel on
So
the
it's
bottom.
all on the bottom,
And
yeah.
it had a nice drop to the stock, where the 1717 they were kind of straight, where later on they started dropping the stock, like the 1728 on. They made every so many years they would make changes on the musket.
You have your length of your trigger guards here. See that?
Yeah, shorter.
That's a 1774.
1774. This
So the older the musket, the
Longer
longer the
the-
front.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, I'm just going to jump in here, these parts, you know, this stuff is still out and around. These parts that we've got here, we just found those recently at an estate sale. They just had them in a pile of junk to get rid of, you know.
Oh my God.
And you know, this stuff is still out there. You
The
just got to
fellow gave us the lock. I seen the lock and I said, "That's a Charleville lock." And the guy said, "Oh, you can have it." And he gave us a couple other things too. A case for a pistol that came from down in Fishkill,
Yeah.
in the Van Wyck.
Isaac Van Wyck,
house.
we got lucky that day, Pete. We picked up a few nice things.
You'll see as we go along, you'll see a change in the cock on the musket too. You'll see a change, and you'll see an evolution of them from what we call a serpentine It'll be going on up to
Yeah,
a
this,
close.
yeah, serpentine, or sometimes called a gooseneck. You'll see how it's like an S.
You'll see,
You'll see that
there's a little
evolve in the
collection
next
of it.
one. Yeah, yeah. Very weak too, by the way. They could crack right through the you'll commonly find original locks where that's been cracked or broken.
Or rewelded,
Rewelded, yeah.
or brazed, or whatever.
Yeah.
This is your 1763 Charleville. What they've done here is you're banded all the way up through. Right now, we're missing a band here, which I think Paul says he's got one for it. And you see the evolution of the cock out here. Like, this is a completely enclosed cock now. It's reinforced.
The ring cock, yeah.
Ring cock, yeah.
And the difference between,
You see this is shortened up, trigger guard here is shortened up.
So this,
And the butt plate is also shorter.
Shorter butt plate.
One has a longer butt plate, this has a shorter one.
yeah, so they're truncating the butt plate tang, they're truncating the trigger guard. Straighter, see the comb is nice and straight, not droopy butt. You've got the reinforced cock with this front ring. It gives it more structural stability, so it's not so easy to snap off. The 1763 patterns came out after the French and Indian War. Essentially, France had used up its inventory of earlier muskets, so there was a French armorer, the Count de Stanville, who reinvented the French musket, added these features. They took into account that the French troops thought the earlier muskets were longer and heavier, and they came up with the original 1763, and ironically, it was even heavier than what they were replacing. So the true 1763, this is not a true 1763, this is an actual improvement on it. The true 1763, if you ever find one, is a little beefier, bulkier, weighty, and immediately was identified as being not a vast improvement. So, an armorer at Charleville Armor, there's 3 raw manufacturers, Maubeuge, Saint Etienne, and Charleville. An armorer at Charleville slimmed down the musket, added the improvements, or actually took away some of the improvements in the sense that he made it more, made it lighter, made it more manageable, and it was much better accepted. And so, I don't know if it's oral tradition or gun show wisdom, but the notion that we would call these French muskets Charlevilles is pretty much because this particular model, which was very influential in changing the design of the French muskets, was actually originated at Charleville. Later, all the improvements were ordered to be copied at Maubeuge and Saint Etienne. So, the master armorer at the armory at Charleville was the man responsible for taking de Stanville's design and refining it. And this will become the quintessential musket of the American Revolution. These will show up in prominence throughout all the continental records and issues, and right through the end of the war they'll turn up. And these were imported by the thousands. The earlier model, the 1754, not as many because they were almost entirely consumed during the French and Indian War, whereas this model was newly made and more available. There is a great story of palace intrigue, if we wanted to go into that right now, about how these became available to the Americans.
oh, sure.
I had to write down some notes because this gets convoluted, but I did write down the notes. So something I think we should take into account in the success of the American Revolution is somewhat of a miracle, and it's due in part to numerous totally unrelated events all over the world kind of coming together at the right time, and our forefathers having seen the opportunity and the benefit in capitalizing on those opportunities. So I think when some people say, "Oh, it was divine providence," I think they mean it because, these unrelated events coming together for no reason whatsoever, but they led to the founding of our country. This is certainly one of those stories. After the French and Indian War, the Minister of War to the king had a favorite designer, young up-and-coming armorer, and his name was Gribeval. And Gribeval will show up later on in French history, especially leading into the Napoleonic Wars, but at this point is a very young man. And Gribeval and the Minister of War, they were rising through the ranks of palace favor. And at some point, the Minister of War was caught up in a scandal in 1770 about finances and other things. And so anybody associated with him was kind of pushed out of the way, including Gribeval, who was a very progressive young designer for armaments. The king relies on his old master armorer, a man named Valliere Sr. especially. Valliere Sr. is responsible for all those previous designs of muskets, which were being pushed out of the way in favor of new designs. And so Valliere, the younger, the son, is put into the position of master armorer for the king. And it's seen as a step backwards. Gribeval's success, the Minister of War and Gribeval were absolved of all their wrongdoings and then brought back into favor again. But this time, Gribeval decides to solidify his position, and what Gribeval was able to do was take all the previous existing stockpiles of arms, all the D'Estanville and earlier arms, and basically convince the government to put it up for sale. And he was, so this is a very personal, this was a move to solidify his personal position in French government. At the same time, the American Revolution is waging, and funding is made available through intricate maneuvers between the Spanish government and other governments, and of course, Benjamin Franklin and other persons who, John Jay and other persons who were overseas trying to secure financing for the American Revolution. So the money from Spain is reaching the Americans, and at the exact same time, thousands of obsolete French muskets are going up on the market, and so they're able to be purchased by the Americans and brought over. Literally, I think I recall seeing 150,000 French arms. There was 50 or 60,000 barrels, locks, parts, this, that, and the other thing. Tremendous inventories of material came here. And so this cleared the warehouses, cleared out all the French armories, and of course then the French look towards Gribeval to say, design us a new musket, design us something new and innovative. And Gribeval is, as master armorer, is focused on the concepts of interchangeability of parts, on modern manufacturing techniques, things that we'll see in terms of mass production. So now he's not going from one-off handmade muskets to assembly line production. So Gribeval is the visionary who finally decides the only way I'm going to ever get this accomplished is to get rid of all the old stuff, out with the old, in with the new. And of course, all the funding that came from the United States funded Gribeval's grand plan to rearm France in a modern system. Things he did, simple things that Gribeval was responsible for. In terms of, for example, cannons. If you look at a train of artillery and you've got a limber, you've got a cannon, you've got battery wagons and chests and support vehicles and everything else. They're all horse-drawn. Well, you got a little wheel on the front of the caisson, you got a big wheel on the cannon, you got, whatever. Gribeval said all the wheels are going to be exactly the same. Every wheel's the same, so whatever breaks down, we just take a wheel off of that, put it on that. And these are the kind of, it's simple enough, and you would think today it's just common sense. But that are the kind of things that Gribeval was responsible for. And as we go on into later muskets, you'll probably see some evolution of Gribeval's designs. So, but this will be when you find French muskets that are either marked United States or attributed to the American Revolution. This is the quintessential musket by far.
In the 1763 was a musket that Lafayette brought thousands of them over to this country. And a lot of times people will call it the Lafayette musket because he brought so many of these over to France. We were buying so many, like Paul said, from the arsenal over there in France.
And we have a replica here for later. We'll do a little hand-me-arounds if they want.
Yeah, sure, sure.